Welcome everybody to the first meeting of the Big Hole Watershed Committee of the year 2024. Last I checked. As you guys get seated, we'll start with a round of introductions as we always do. My name is Pedro Marquez. I'm the Executive Director of the Watershed Committee, and we'll go around the room this way. Just because you're sitting at the back row doesn't mean you don't have to talk into the mic. Just so you all know, there's folks on Zoom, so the microphone is key for anyone on Zoom to hear what's going on in the room, otherwise they won't know. So appreciate it. Thanks for coming. Thanks for the packed house. And we'll move on.
Andy, go over you. Over for you. Jenna Jones, Montana Bureau of Mines and Geology. Mary Sutherland, Montana Bureau of Mines and Geology.
Frank Collins, Peter Wise Matt Cornetti, from the Complete Black Regenerative River.
I'm Nadine, I'm from Western Western.
I'm Emma Day, and I'm also with somewhat Western. I'm Savannah Breeder, I'm a freshman. I'm Professor Bear, I'm a freshman.
Tyler Biddy, and I'm a sophomore. Gus Wiggins, and I'm a freshman.
Hi everyone, thanks for having us. I'm Erica Freetop. I'm a professor of environmental sustainability at Montana Western. And we have our sustaining water resources class here tonight. And basically it's a water management class and we're focusing on our local watershed. So thanks for having us. We're glad to be here. And I'm going, as we keep saying names, maybe say interest related to water. That's more interesting than what you are.
I'm Keegan McDaniel, and I'm majoring in ecology.
I'm Scully, I'm majoring in environmental science.
I'm Caleb Martin, and environmental science too.
I'm Ian Smith, I'm majoring in ecology.
I'm Vern Hayes, geology.
I'm Eliza Vaughn, I'm majoring in science.
I'm Legal Williams, I'm majoring in environmental sustainability.
My name is Caleb Science, and I'm an majoring in environmental science. I'm Corey Kiefler, and I'm an ecology major. I'm Shiloh Rainey, I'm an environmental science major.
Landon Russell, fish and wildlife ecology.
Carson Curry, and I'm an outdoor specialist in business. I'm Hendrick, and my degree is ecology.
I'm Andrew, my degree is.
Jim Q, abuse of the water utility. Jim Hayden, Martha Rancher from Berlin. Dean Peterson, rancher from Bighorn.
Ryan Morris, representative George Grant. You. Ryan Lang, Seymour.
Diane, that you listen? Caitlin Boring, Montana DNRC. Caitlin Floyd, Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks.
Vern Smith, my son and I own Regerative Land Solutions. He's going to be zooming in later. Doing a talk to them. And the board administration programs manager for the BHWC.
I'm Hannah Lynch, I'm the associate director for the watershed committee. And everyone, please make sure and sign the sheet on the table back there.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Without further ado, we will start with our pre-sit report to get a sense of what's going on in our atmosphere. Skipping the intros, I see.
My name is Caitlin Boring. I'm with the Montana DNRC. I work in the upper Big Hole, and I'm gonna just give you guys updates on what's going on right now this winter as far as precipitation. I first want to start off, this is our stream engagement floor that we have for the DNRC. It's got all of our real-time sites in blue, red are seasonal sites, and if you go to this website, you can access all the stream gauge data that we have right now in the Big Hole. Current stream flow, we're all in ice. This is for the drought management sections, for the Big Hole Watershed Committee. Not really anything to report right now. Snow water equivalent SWE is at 69% of the median values for the Big Hole watershed right now. These are our 8 SNOTEL sites that we use to determine what the watershed SWE is. And then this is a HIPSOMI SWE generation from based on elevation. So you can see most of the snowpack right now is around the 8,000 to 6,000 foot levels. Low elevation snow is above average, above 100%, and then mid-range and high elevation is below average, as you can see from the 69% that I showed a second ago. Precipitation is 72% of the median. Climate outlook, we are in an El Nino advisory still, but we are going to be switching to ENSO neutral likely by April to June. And then they're also predicting that there's going to be a 55% chance that we switch into a La Nina. Temperature and precipitation, short range, we're going to be below average temperatures and above average precipitation, hopefully. That pans out. Seasonal temperature outlook, it hasn't been updated since early February, but it's still showing that El Nino cycle of below average precipitation and above average temperatures. This is the drought monitor right now for Montana. We're basically, they're saying right now that we're in a moderate drought to severe drought, and that's based on soil moisture and a bunch of other factors. Oh, and that's all I got. Not a whole lot going on. Anybody have any questions? Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. We get set up for my quick words here. Yeah, maybe that works. I do want to bring up, I just realized we still have a bunch of these maps in the back. $25 without the frame. It is a beautiful topographic map of the Big Hole, and there are marks of places where we've done projects over our 25 years, as well as, you know, all the fishing access sites and things and land ownership. We thought this was something we did after our 25-year anniversary. So anybody interested in those, you can contact us via email or $25 cash. Take one home tonight. And it all goes into our conservation funds and help with the work that we do. All right, from my desk. So kind of the foundational relationships is sort of where we're at right now. I didn't put on there the ginormous list of grant proposals that are sort of in our near term and medium term. Ben will cover a lot of our projects. There's a game plan for every one of them as far as how we're going to get them funded. It's all very difficult and complicated to do. The larger the projects, harder it is to fund, the more grant sources. But on the private side of our relationship building, we put in a proposal to the Broadreach Fund. They're out of Maine, very interested in what we are doing with beaver in the world of beaver conflict mitigation, and as well as some of the policy work that I shared with the governing board, where we're actually influencing. We helped craft language that is now being proposed to the Army Corps of Engineers to make it easier to do low-tech restoration projects and not have to go through a cumbersome federal regulatory process. So they were super interested in our involvement in that work and doing more beaver-related mitigation. So it's looking likely that they'll give us some money this year for the first time. The High Stakes Foundation, also this is general support money. They invited us back again, to submit to them. This will be our third year, and they'll fund an organization up to 5 years. That kind of just general capacity funding is pretty important. Some of those funds, we're looking at having a bigger presence at the Butte Folk Festival this year. We were invited to have a tent next to the original stage last year. We kind of patched together what we had to have a little tent and some display items and some education, but now we're working a little bit more, sort of, what's the word? I'm blanking on words, but we're working with Butte Silverbow on educational materials and ways to talk about water. We're going to be right at the water station where people are filling up their water bottles. So that's a great opportunity to talk about how 40 to 60% last we checked of the water in Butte comes from the Big Hole River. Getting people educated on that and all the work that we're doing, it ties to the water that folks in Butte use. Cinnabar Foundation, again, they've been with us for a long time. Also making inroads with 2 large ranches, one down below the notch and one by Wise River, where we're really helping relatively new landowners, developing some pretty cool projects on their properties and getting them sort of in tune with the work that we do so that all the people that end up visiting their ranch get to know us and our work. We also had a great visit today with new owners of the Wise River Club and looked at some of the things that they want to do on their land. Some of it's beaver related and mitigating beaver. And I think I may have finally found a way to auction off this guitar that I had a couple years ago. I never figured out how to combine big old watershed and a guitar, but I think I finally figured it out. It's gonna be awesome. So that's all good. That's all, you know, private dollars, like with all the private donations we got over December and January. That's what drives our organization, gives us the freedom to pursue all this work that we're doing. On the public side of things, really just deepening our engagement with our agency partners. Ben will probably cover more details here, but the Elkhorn, that's what these images are from. This is from a window in the one building at the Coolidge Ghost Town that you can still go in. And this is the old Elkhorn mine. This is not OSHA approved. Do not go there. And actually the forest has now set a closure for the Elkhorn mine. So we've been working there for 3 or 4 years now, doing characterization. There's still serious contamination on the ground and in the water coming out of the old mines. The mine works there. And we finally got some structural engineers to evaluate this place as we were looking at how we're going to remedy all of this pollution. And turns out you don't want to be standing under that. You definitely don't want to be walking on that. So that's a serious hazard, but the forest they saw it last October and realized the importance of closing that site down. So that site is now closed down to visitation and probably won't be open again until the remedy is done. The remedy we're working on, I think you're going to get into it, right? Ish. 50,000 cubic yards of contaminated dirt needs to leave. That's a lot of trucks and a big hole in the ground. But it's way more complicated than that. We also, Ben and I had a real productive meeting at the Wisdom Ranger District earlier a couple months ago. And we have a partnership agreement with them. They're looking at bringing a whole bunch of money our way for Ben to basically run a big conifer encroachment project and similar work with the BLM. And it goes on to a theme that we've been working with quite a while, which is, you know, a lot of the differences like what's happening with our water and our water balance. Irrigation has stayed relatively constant and consistent over the last 100 years. One of the things that has changed is the number of straws in the mountains drinking out of the ground in the form of conifers. So I think a lot of the agencies are really focused and targeted to reducing conifer encroachment as a way to not only improve range health, forest health, but also improve overall water supply and availability. Especially for all of you students back there, start looking into how much water trees drink. And it's interesting when you look at national media or think about climate change, everyone's saying planting trees, plant trees, plant trees. In this landscape, it might be the opposite. So Ben's got a couple of just great relationships with our agency partners. What we see is a lot of this federal money needs to get obligated. And these agencies are trying to obligate that money as quickly as possible. And partnerships with groups like ours is really how to get it done. Because they have a lot of strings and handcuffs bureaucratically on how to just get projects done, and we can just move a lot faster. So we're capitalizing on those opportunities. And Fish, Wildlife and Parks, also our Mount Hagen work is still coming. Ongoing O&M activities and some bigger picture projects that Ben's teeing up. And we are going to be hosting an intern, Emma Roginski, who came to us last year as a Wild Rockies Field Institute student. She'll be staying at the Mill Creek House and will be with us for a couple months, really helping Ben run his operation down there. We're pretty excited to have her. As far as board and governance work that's happening, I sent out a request to write a letter in support of the proposal at Red Rock Lakes to notch beaver dams to allow for more railing passage through those beaver dams. The fisheries folks down there are seeing the gauntlet of beaver dams. I'm a beaver guy, all about beaver, but in this case, it looks like the beaver dams are restricting movement of grayling up into their spawning tributary streams. So that WP is proposing to go in and notch those beaver dams in the spring. Then the beaver come back and rebuild them. I have not yet heard any dissenting opinions from the governing board, so I'm pretty close to firing a letter of support off for that project. There was also a comment period from the Forest Service on their commercial use days. We did not respond at all as a committee. I think there were a lot of strong opinions about what's going on there. I've not heard recently where that's at, but the proposal was to dramatically increase the amount of commercial permits on the forest. That has a lot of implications for how many people are using the site, which people, pay commercial interests, taking up campgrounds all over the place. I'll keep tracking that as it moves. And then lastly, we had some major steering committee changes that happened at our annual meeting in January. Yeah, maybe hit that button. So after 25 years, Randy is not here. Look at him already. After 25 years, almost 25 years of board chairman, Randy Smith has stepped down from that role. He's still on our governing board because we won't let him not. And in his place, Jim Hagan-Barth has graciously volunteered to take on his position. And we're also welcoming Dean Peterson onto the steering committee. Those are big, exciting changes for us. We're just glad to have, these guys, Steve Lubeck and Roy Morris, continue in their roles as treasurer and secretary. We lost one governing board member, Paul Cleary. He had to step down from the governing board. And other than that, we remain as strong as ever. That is everything I have to say. Thank you. Any questions? And we also lost Ray Weaver this year. It was October, November.
He resigned from the board last year.
Yeah, he's a longtime board member of ours who passed. So, yeah, it's hard to lose folks that have been such a part of the organization for so long. Any questions for you? Yes. Okay. Steering committee.
Generally, we don't have much of a steering committee report. This year we do. We've been really, really busy. First of all, working with the DRC, we paid over trying to get things worked out so we did the expenses to make correcting, or at least there's satisfaction. CPA working on the payroll to satisfy those bureaucrats. And also, she's director at a proposal. As you well know, he has ties to Brazil, with married to a Brazil bride. And he would like his students, or his children, to go to school for a year in Brazil. And so he asked us to consider his going to Brazil for a period of time and working remotely. we were pretty hesitant to start with, but we considered all the energy and progress that this committee has made in the last, ever since Pedro came on board, and realized its value. And we also recognize the value of tenant. Working remotely is certainly a possibility. We talked to our key employee, Ben, and she cannot ask them if they pick up a lot of slack and what their thoughts were. After we mulled this over, we came up with a proposal. We presented to Pedro. And fill out this, and our, as a steering committee, our job is to look at the situation like this and present a proposal to the whole board. And this is the census process. And so if we will present a written proposal through email to the board and ask them if they go along with the steering committee's recommendation to allow Pedro and Shannon to spend a year and and I think I know we would. So we were busy putting that all together and finished it last night. And that's the gist of what we have to say in that regard. Anyone else on the steering committee? So anyway, those of you on the board will be getting their detailed report depending upon your response, today or later. We'll make a decision. Before you, that's all I have. Right. Before you, with these ecology students there, before you take that picture, look at the little yellow spots up there in that forest. And that's the result of 100 years no fire and no lawn. That is encroachment from conifers on aspens and on down into the riparian areas. So that has to be solved if we want our ecology to function in an ecologically sound manner. But that's a prime example of what's happening. That should be mosaics of green and yellow, and not just of the water community. So I just thought that was important since these conversations. That's all I have. Hey.
Yeah. Everywhere you look. You won't unsee it. It's like when you turn on your beaver glasses, you'll never unsee a stream without beaver. And conifers and aspens kind of the same way. Okay. This guys, are we going? Tammy, you go? Okay, she pulls that out.
Sure, yeah, that's all. Great. All right. So I'm Tana Lynch, I'm the associate director, and I also manage our wildlife program. So I'll try and, I usually breeze through this pretty quick, but I'll try and back up a little bit and provide some more context for the students who are here today. So our wildlife conflict reduction programs include a range rider program, and our range rider patrols summer grazing allotments in the upper Big Hole on Forest Service land during the summer, looking for predator activity, which is primarily wolves, but also black bears and grizzly bears, and checking on livestock condition. And the goal of that is to try to prevent conflicts between predators and livestock, and then also find carcasses and report them to wildlife services quickly so that producers can be reimbursed for their losses. So this is a quick intro to that. I didn't actually include anything on my slides about the Regenerative program because it's starting up in July, so a lot going on with that right now. But our other program is our carcass removal and composting program. And so we work to pick up livestock carcasses, primarily cattle, but also some sheep, occasional or cow, or horse, from local ranches, and we haul them to our carcass compost site outside of Wisdom. And we use a dump truck for that, which we borrow from the Red Rock Lakes National Wildlife Refuge down south of Delman, around the Dell, Oneida area. And so that's the big exciting thing that I have to announce. is that we got the dump truck. So it took some time this year just to get everybody coordinated and get it moved up out of the red box. And that was big because last year the dump truck got snowed in down there, which complicated things for us. So we've got the dump truck. We're starting carcass removal, both in the big hole and then also down in the Dell area, which we do for the Centennial Valley Association. They reimburse us for those costs, and those carcasses go to the Beaverhead County landfill. And another new exciting thing, we just hired this guy, his name's Justin Cottingham. He lives up in Wisdom and works at the MPT site with our existing driver, John Costa. And he's just gonna provide a little more support for the carcass composting removal program. John works full-time, and he's pretty busy, so this should help provide service a little more quickly and maybe a little more frequently. So our carcass removal program runs March through May, but I said or sooner because we're ready to go if anybody has carcasses they need picked up. And just so you know, it doesn't have to just be in the Wisdom Jackson area. Our driver will come down to Melrose, Glen, Divide throughout the watershed. So if he can get the dump truck there, he'll come and get the carcasses. You do have to meet him and help him load them into the dump truck. So I put the phone numbers on there for John and Justin. You can always reach out to me. And there are also magnets on the back table with John's information and some more information about the program. So, next slide. All right, the next really exciting thing is we are part of this big collaborative that secured funding for wildlife conflict reduction through the Western Landowners Alliance and the Heart of the Rockies initiative. So it covers 5 states and it's $25 million, but or $22 million, excuse me. But 16.5 million is just for Montana, Oregon, and Colorado. And we expect to see some of that funding over the next few years. This is through the Regional Conservation Partnership Program grant. And then we're also expecting to see some funding through the America the Beautiful Challenge grant, which we will also be a sub-recipient of the grant from these 2 groups, the Western Landowners Alliance and Heart of the Rockies. And this builds on several years of our work with this landowner-led conflict reduction partnership, which is basically just a collaborative of groups throughout Western Montana that are working on these type of projects, whether they be range riding, carcass, fencing, garbage. There's a few different methods, but we've been working with this group for, I don't know, probably at least 10 years. So it's pretty exciting to see this level of funding come out of that group. And this should fund our wildlife programs for the next 5 years. And so with these new funding sources, there's an opportunity for expansion for these programs. So I have some ideas for what we might need, but I wanted to put it to this group today and see if anybody else has any thoughts or ideas for what we might need in terms of expansion. So one possibility is we usually do carcass removal in the spring during calving and lambing. We could potentially offer a season in the fall during weaning. We've talked about possibly starting another compost site in the lower big hole, maybe in the Glen area. We can haul carcasses up to Wisdom, but it seems like we don't get a lot of calls from producers down there, and they might be more interested in participating if they saw the carcass site and it was a little closer. Another idea that we've just been kicking around is getting a second rain dryer. And one option is to patrol more of the forest. Another option, and the one that we're more considering, is kind of to get a backup for Chet. So we love Chet and we want to keep him on as long as he's interested in doing the job and able to do the job. But like all of us, he's aging. So we just want to have a backup plan in place and make sure that we don't lose any of that great wealth of knowledge that Chet has gained over the last decade or so. So we've been talking for a while. Does anybody have any thoughts, ideas, questions, comments?
Where are we with the state in regards to funds for the state?
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. I thought I put it on here somewhere, but I must have forgotten. It's too much on my slide. Yeah, so we also got $21,000 from the livestock loss board, which will fund both our range rider program, primarily our range rider program, but also a little bit for our carcass program.
Functioning again. Yeah.
If anybody, if you think of it later and you have any ideas for ways to expand these programs or just make them more useful to you, particularly if you're a producer, I'd love to hear your feedback. So please get in touch.
Hi, everybody. Well, again, I'm Ben before the Recreation Program Manager and met last in November. And since we met, I was able to kind of go through all of the work that we did last year, that we accomplished last year, and I shared it with our board in January. But I wanted to quickly share with you guys the metrics and all the accomplishments that we made as a committee last year before we start to get into the weeds on all the new projects that we have going on. So we did 2 beaver conflict mitigation projects. We restored 4.5 miles of stream. We did 25 acres of uplands restoration work, 530 of conifer encroachment acres. We facilitated 2 reports and completed those, and then we paid for 7 designs, right? So it's actually quite a bit of work. And if you sum all that up, these are the streams that we worked on and where and kind of what we did. So we worked on 13 streams in the Big Bull watershed last year. And 3 of those were actually on the Clark Fork side, which has to do with our work with the natural resources damage programs. So we had a really productive year last year, and I'm hoping that we're going to have another productive year this year. So this is the program's outlook that I have identified for 2024. And I kind of wanted to quickly go through these projects for you guys to give you guys a flavor of what I'm going to be doing, what we're going to be doing. So when I speak about these projects this coming season, you kind of have an idea of what I'm talking about here. So Pedro talked about our NRD work in the Anaconda Uplands. We've been doing this for years. We're going to continue to do this. This is all Anaconda smelter emissions and logging and degradation in the Mount Hagen Wildlife Management Area. And we're the major contractor to make sure that work gets done. And so we have a full workload of that coming up in 2024. Also, we're finally going to get our Pennington Bridge restoration designs done this year. They were supposed to get done last year. I'll spare you the details on why that didn't happen, but the state is finally going to get the money to our engineers, and our engineers are Great West Engineering, and they're going to be working on that. Pedro touched on this Elkhorn mine and mill. We really have the ball rolling on that project, and the Forest Service is completely bought in. Pedro mentioned that the mill is going to get shut down. In the meantime, what we're working on is making sure that our engineers and the folks that we're working with over in Pioneer are getting what is called it's EGA. It's an environmental. Yeah, so that's a fancy word for basically what are the alternatives and the analysis for the site, right? What are the different projects that you've looked at? What are our different options? What are the costs for those options? And why are we going to proceed with doing action A or, our favorite action? This is a very intense document. They sent us the draft. I read through it a couple of weeks ago, and it's about 170 pages. And it's very circular, very make your head spin, but it's something that is needed to go down the process. So we're going to keep working on that. After that gets done, we're going to go to this 30% design to actually remove all of the soils that are up there. We've already done the soils characterization. We know how much material is up there that's still contaminated. So now we need to make sure that we get the designs to get those off the landscape. There's also a public process. That'll be a big part of some of the work that we do this summer. We're going to help facilitate a public meeting. The Forest Service has asked us to help do that, to make sure that the public knows what we're doing up there. There's, you know, I think there's gonna be a public comment period as well, so we want to make sure that this isn't a surprise for folks and do our best to get it out there. The Forest Service is going to work for us, you know, for them to get it out there as well. So, you know, 30% design, it might seem like a very simple thing, just pick up the dirt and move it, but it's very complicated site. So we're hoping to get to 30% design this year and then hopefully more in the next, maybe this year too. We'll see how funding comes through. Okay, I want to touch, next slide 10, I want to touch about our First Chance Gulch habitat improvements. This is a grant that I got through the Future Fisheries Improvement Program. And this is on First Chance Gulch here in the Mount Hagen Wildlife Management Area. This is French Gulch. We've done a lot of work on French Gulch, and this is just a tributary to French Gulch. It has also been placer mined. A lot of placer mining occurred on this little stream here. And from talking with Jim and some other professionals, there's no habitat on this stream because it's been placer mined, but it doesn't necessarily warrant a full-blown major stream restoration, bring in the excavators and the haul trucks. We can accomplish our goals for habitat by installing these simple log stem habitat structures, which is basically just a log tied into the stream to create a gradient drop that will create plunge, that will create scour, and that will create some pool habitat for these fish. And this is within the French Creek boundary where all the Arctic grayling and west trout reintroductions have occurred. So this is going to benefit those fish. And we're going to hope to install 50 to 80 of those things this year. I'm scheduling out some contractors to help me with that. Yeah, if any of you guys are interested in helping make up some, oh yeah, this is an example of the structures, but if any of you guys are interested in doing this work, just reach out to me. Again, it's a simple log that you install that creates a nice plunge for the fish, and then this is just another example of the benefits that can occur with this type of project, right? You get scour, and then you get some gravels moving around and moving through the system, and you can get some good spawning substrate for the fish. And this, I just highlighted that they've already seen fish use these areas for spawning grounds. Some of this work occurred in the French Gulch drainage back in 2016, so we're using that as a template for this First Chance Gulch project. All right, the next thing that we're going to do this year, it's also on the Mount Hagen Wildlife Management Area, and it's again in the French Creek drainage, right? So it's all connected to that reintroduction project. But we've identified with all the work that we've been doing in the drainage for a decade, we've identified some culverts that are impeding fish to get past them, right? You don't have complete stream connectivity when you have culverts that are existing here. And this is just one example of one of the culverts that's going up. This is on Little California Creek. It's completely just squashed and it's in a state of disarray. Fish can't get through there. So we're gonna replace that culvert. We're also gonna replace a very large culvert on 6 Mile Creek. So this is the Dry Creek Road. This is a popular road for folks recreating in the area. And we're gonna replace this culvert. Right now, I think there's 2 36-inch round pipes that are too steep, and there's about a 2-foot drop here that you can see. So that there's just no way that fish can jump up that high and then get through the really steep culvert. So we're gonna replace that with an 8-foot long by 60-foot long culvert. So they're called aquatic organism passage projects, right? We're gonna make sure that those fish can freely move up through that system and access all that cold water habitat. And that's the whole goal with all these projects. We're gonna replace 2, and then we're gonna just completely remove 2 culverts, one on Julius Gulch and then another one on Little California Creek. The road system is ancient, and there's just no need for those culverts to be there. We'll free up about 8 miles of tributary for these fish to gain all this good habitat. So this project's out to bid right now. I have it out to public bid, and I'm hoping I get some competitive prices on this project so we can get it done this year. Okay, yeah, Pedro touched on this, but this is a participating agreement that we have with the Forest Service to do a lot of this conifer encroachment work. We did the 530 acres that I mentioned up in Trail Creek last year. And this year, they're telling me that they want to focus more on the Eastern Pioneers, which is music to my ears because I've been working in those foothills for quite some time. And really, when I first got hired on for this position, I introduced myself to all the agency folks in Dillon and said, hey, how can we get some large scale projects that are cross boundary and they're within one drainage system? I can help facilitate that work, and it's actually coming to fruition right now. I have a lot of synergies in the Eastern Pioneers, and we have some good cross boundary projects that are occur, especially in Trapper Creek. So these darker red polygons here are the ones that I'm already contracted with to conquer through the Forest Service. And then these lighter shades are on the BLM ground. And I'm hoping that with the participating agreement that we have with the BLM, I can actually hold the entire contract for all of these acres and get it done in one fell swoop. It might take a little bit. These contractors are really good at what they do. The hard part is just maybe getting through the contracting and getting these guys scheduled. But we're talking about a substantial amount of acres here. And I love to see, work that's occurring on both sides of the property boundary, right? And I'm working with some private landowners in this area to do more of this kind of work and really treat the drainage the way it should be, right? And so in that same vein, I also am working in the Eastern Pioneers through that BLM contract to do riparian conifer encroachment, right? And stream enhancement work. So it's just really cool. I think by the end of all of this, I'll be able to put a map up and show all the different projects that we've done in the area and tell a really neat story. So this year identified for me and the Eastern Pioneers under that BLM agreement is this very large head cut stabilization project. That's me. That's a head cut 5 feet high, Browns Gulch, that we're going to stabilize this head cut. I wanted to do it last year, but this whole entire willow clump fell in right here and made it to be a mechanized project instead of a hand project. We're going to do that. And then I also have about 40 acres of riparian conifer encroachment, also some in Browns Gulch, and then a lot in Trapper Creek tributaries to Trapper Creek. So this is just one example of what we're going to do. We're going to cut the entirety of those conifers out of this riparian area. Unfortunately, we have to keep conifers that are greater than 12 dBH in there. So it actually makes sense because those are really big trees that you don't want to have to mess with because it's a lop and scatter treatment. Here are those units. This is the one we're going to do this year, way up here. This is Trapper Creek. So this is just an unnamed intermittent tributary. And 516 we're going to do conifer encroachment work. I also did about 85 low tech stream enhancement structures in Browns Gulch proper last year. And so this year I want to make sure that we go in there and actually maintain those structures. If you don't go in there and maintain them, then a lot of your investment is not wasted, but it's just not the most wisest thing to do. You want to make sure that you can go in and beef up those structures. So that is what we are going to do in the Eastern Pioneers. A lot more about that here. What other things do we have going on? All right, as you guys know, we finished our Smith Sage Springs restoration project outside of Wisdom last year. And that's just what we're calling phase one. A really, really exciting project, not that that wasn't exciting, is phase two, which is this reconnect of the Smith Sage Springs to the North Fork of the Big Hole River. At the moment, this water body is completely, it's getting completely captured by a ditch that's starting way up here on the North Fork. So right now, all of this really cold and clean water is just going straight into this ditch system. And so phase two, now that we've done the restoration work above it, we hope to siphon the stream over the ditch channel and then connect it to the North Fork. A lot of work to be done on this one, but that's what I'm going to be working on this year, and I've already kind of started down that route this winter already. So we're working with the Fish Wildlife Service on getting that done as well. I should also mention that the upper, this is just a photo of some of the wetlands work that we did in phase one. We have a filmmaker doing a little 7 to 10 minute documentary about the project, and I'm actively working to fundraise to get the funds to finish that project out. It's going to be a really cool film project about all the good work that we do in the Big Hole Watershed Committee and as a collaborative, as a whole in the Big Hole. So more on that. And then I won't bore you guys with the amount of grant writing and reporting that I've been doing for all the projects that I did last year, but it's certainly a lot of work. It's been on my plate and I'll keep doing it. And it needs to get done, but what really fires me up is actually doing the work and planning for all the future. That's all I have. I'll save the next slide for another day. And with that, are you guys having questions? Come on, students. I need one question from you. All right. There we go. Yeah, so that's a, Pedro, you want to go?
Yeah. So placer mining is gold mining from back in the day. What he's referring to was the first gold strike in the Big Hole, 1884, I think, or 64. Yeah. 1864. Gold is heavy, so when it's in a water body, it'll settle right through the rocks, and it'll hit a layer where it'll settle at the bottom of the stream. So to get that gold, you pretty much have to dig out the stream, turn it upside down, take all the water and soft, silty stuff, run it through some sort of sluice so that you can settle out the gold. What's left with placer mining is you've got a stream that was turned upside down and you're left with the big pile of rocks that used to be the bottom of the stream. The big pile of rocks is like what you see on the landscape. So the problem with that is you reconfigure, there's no soft stuff in the stream or in the floodplain, so the stream tends to get locked into one path, and it's generally a straight arrow, right? And so there's no habitat. It washes away any fines that are in, or any gravels that a fish would want to go to spawn or think that this is like a viable place to live. So you're left with like a stream system with oversized rocks in the bottom of it that just sucks for fish. So yeah, if and where there was placer mining, you can tell if you've ever driven by Alder, that's like the primo example of placer mine hell in Montana. The examples we had in French Gulch were like miniature versions of that. Yeah, great question. Where's the second question? All right. It's all restoration ecology. It's all super cool. Don't worry about the grant writing. You'll get there. But I will say also, learning to understand the finances and the money and learning to get really good at sniffing out the money is a really important part of these natural resource fields. And I wish someone had told me that a long time ago. Because one of the crazy things and the coolest thing about what we do is because we're the ones getting the money, we own the projects, we get a seat at the table. So then we get to tell and direct engineers and inject ecology and other crazy ideas into their designs. And I think that overall, we bring other expertise into our projects. And so overall, I think we get better projects that hit on multiple resource objectives. So anyway, that's something I wish someone had told me when I was sitting where you're sitting. Is there any additional business at this point? We all just jonesing for some coffee. We'll take a short break and then we'll have Vern come up and talk to us about soil biology. Any questions? Okay. Awesome, yeah, perfect. Classroom, that's what's left. And then what should be stream bottom is like sagebrush and high and dry stuff. Our first speaker for the year, Vern Smith, and we're delighted that he came to us all the way from Paradise Valley near Gardner to share with us his knowledge and understanding of soil biology and managing rangelands for soil biology. He also has a wealth of knowledge about various other things, grazing, ranching. But conversation can go in a lot of directions. I will be flipping this. Feel free to ask questions as he goes, and he told me he likes to have fluid conversations if that's possible, so keep them coming. And then lastly, someone left their cell phone in the latest. Check your pockets. Don't have to come up here and embarrass yourself now, but it's sitting right here.
All right. Well, guys, thanks for letting me cut it off. You hear a lot about what you guys are doing over in our country, so it's kind of cool to be over here. I was talking to Pedro that I'm on a bunch of different committees. They even travel like some of the fish and game, and they brag about you guys. And I guess the reason I'm here is because of Ben. He's buddies with my son, so. Yeah. That's all I got here, so.
There he is.
That's my kid. I'm gonna stick to what we're doing, what my son and I are doing, the background that we're talking about. Conifer encroachment, I mean, when I was 27, I put the whole section on purpose. It worked. They didn't get in trouble. It was very effective. Those days are long gone. I've, settled down a little bit. Right now, I was an outfitter, ran cattle, horses were a lot of my background, and I'm kind of, this last chapter of my life, I'm tying this all up with biology, because my son really enjoys clean waters. He's a kayaker like Ben. He was just in Chile this winter. I was just in Brazil last week, actually, and yes, you need to go back, but I'll get started here. So if you have questions, just interrupt me, stop and say something. So this is kind of, and what got me started on biology, I went to a racing profit school, and some of you guys have probably heard of that. And the thing that intrigued me the most in that 1 week was a little hour presentation by Dr. Jones, Christine Jones. And I go, wow, there's a lot of stuff I don't get. And all of a sudden, I just became fixated on it. That's kind of the way I am by nature. I get fixated. I thought I got to figure this stuff out. So I started digging deeper, doing trials. And I go, wow, this stuff is real. The diversity we talk about up above ground, if we're not matching it below ground, I think we're leaving a lot on the table. We're leaving a ton on the table. You kids are here talking about water. This is what cleans and filters the water. So these little guys are the workers that we need to manage if we're going to be successful going forward, especially with the drought finding. If you guys know this, wave at me and I'll rush through it quicker, but if we grow grass to feed our cattle, and then we need to understand what does the grass eat? So the area that we kind of focus on in our business is the second trophic level of the grass. And what I'm talking about is the bacteria and the fungi, the nematodes and the protozoas over there. The first trophic level, of course, is the sun. When grass, when it grows, when Mother Nature's doing the work for it, it knows what it needs when it needs it. So when it secretes exudates in the soil, these little guys here are basically like miners, and they're going around taking different elements and they're putting them in their body, they're consuming them. And the plant says, okay, right now I need molybdenum. So it'll secrete some sugars. It'll trap that fungi or bacteria into the rhizosphere right by the root. And it moves over there because the plant say, hey, go on over here. Well, the plant still can't access that particular element. So then the nematode comes in and the protozoa, they prey on it, they excrete it, and that's perfect plant food for the plant. So the plant can do that on its own. In nature, they do that on their own. What happens a lot of times is we end up disrupting a lot of this stuff, and then we do it through our different practices. We have to, I'm not an organic person. I mean, we need to use fertilizer, we need to use products, we need to do stuff, but we need to be very judicial in the way we put that stuff down, or we're going to disrupt that. So if we go too heavy-handed with artificial inputs, the plant says, well, you know what, maybe I'll just bag feed these little guys, and I'll take this free stuff because we force it to take, because we put salt in the ground. And so they disassociate with the microbial community. Well, so anyway, these little guys, they go, you know, I'm not just going to lay down and die. So what do? They start eating some of our humus. I mean, the carbon in the soil, which is basically what holds the water in the ground. So every molecule of carbon can hang on to 16 molecules of water. I've read that quite a few times. I'm not a scientist, but I've heard that a bunch. So we want to preserve all the organic matter, keep these guys healthy, and keep our crops healthy. Soil, I'm sure you guys have seen this before. You know, we need air, need water. We don't want to be anaerobic. We need organic matter. But these little guys, the organisms in the ground, they're small fraction. They help keep that system healthy and keep it going there. And I'll go to the next slide here. So when I'm looking at a cropping system or rangeland or forest or anything, we work all over the country. We work in California and almond groves, we work Texas, we work Illinois and corn crops. If you guys have heard this before, I'm repeating it, but there's a thing called successional ladder, plant successional ladder, and it's, I think it's related to the fungal bacterial ratio in the soil. And the point I'm going to make here is Dr. Leiningen she started fostering this in the soil food web, but when you look at systems like a farm, when you come in and you plow, you kill a lot of the fungi. So the fungi kind of disappears in the system. When you have a flood and it wipes things out, you have a bacterially dominated system. In nature, what we see the early successional plants come in after disaster. As time goes on, they start to disappear, and then we have our grasses come in. Then over time, we have our shrubs until we get to a climax forest. Well, as you're going up that ladder, you start out bacterially dominated, and then you end up being fungally dominated. Where this can help for ranchers and farmers, and I'll show some examples, we want to be like somewhere here for our row crops and stuff. When we spray, when we farm, we end up digging the fungi and we start dropping ourselves down into more bacterially dominated systems. So when you have a lot of times you'll farm and you put a new hayfield in, you have a lot of those weeds. Those actually, some of those weeds actually like nitrates, but in the nitrates, the fungi is good at switching them over. When you get up into the trees, then your source of nitrogen becomes ammonia. So if we can jump our systems from the bottom up to where we want them in a faster way, we're going to have better germination rates. We're going to have better less weeds. And I'll show you some examples of that as we go on. But tons of positive ripple effects of good soil. You guys can read as well as I can. But all these things I think are true. Better water holding capacity. We talked about the plant disassociating with the biology, so we can have robust plants that don't have the feed value they would if they had been done in a more natural way. What I really like is the fact that it's a system of diminishing inputs and greater profitability. When we work, a lot of the guys that have been with us in the almond groves, they're using less water, 30% less water. A lot of them cut out most of their phosphorus and potassium, and they need some nitrogen for those trees, but it's a process, but it's working out well, and we keep on doing it. Soil structure, when we looked at that picture of soil, we saw that there's air and water. If the soil is compacted, we're going to have anaerobic situations. Water is not going to be able to filtrate into the ground, and we're going to basically have water running off like we see on a lot of places. You have a rain, and the rain just doesn't go in the ground. Fungi is the heavy lifter in most of the systems. And I want to clarify, it's type of fungi, not mycorrhizal fungi. A lot of you guys probably heard that word mycorrhizal. Have you guys heard that word? Okay, so that more associates with trees and other stuff. But like in a grass system, it's not as critical as the free floating type of fungi. And that's what I'm talking about here. So it builds soil structure. It makes macro aggregates where the bacteria makes more micro aggregates. You really want to have that in your system. Otherwise, you're not going to have the structure you need to even keep the system healthy. This is a rabbit hole I don't even want to go down, but here's a picture of a soil biology test. My son's listening right now. He's in Washington. He's looking.
Yep.
He's going back to school to get his PhD with MSU, working on greenhouse moccasin and working on nitrogen, a bunch of different things that we need to figure out a little bit better what we're doing. And part of that is figure out a better testing system for what we're doing underground. We're working a lot of DNA testing. But this is a snapshot. So this number here, if it's done correctly, and if the technician knows what they're doing, can be a very useful tool. Having the flagellates and amoebas and ciliates is also pretty, these guys are the ones that cycle the stuff in the soil. The ciliates, if you have a really high cilia count, you probably have some anaerobic conditions going on. Typically, if you have a lot of more amoebas and flagellates, they like smaller places. This might mean you're a little low on diversity in your fungi, but that's a complicated thing. But there is some meaning that can be gleaned from that.
Is this, you grab a hunk of soil, I mean, we do soil testing for metals and basic stuff, cation exchange, organic matter and stuff. Are labs set up to do this? Like, is this super specialized and is this super expensive to do?
It's more expensive than the chemistry test.
Yeah.
We do chemistry tests too. You'll just take this the same way you would take the samples, 3 or 4 inches, but random deals with the bag.
Yeah.
Ship it right away. I'm tending to like the chemistry test a little bit if you overlay them with a sap or tissue, so then you know what is actually in the plant. This could be a snapshot to tell you just how bad off you are. If you get one of these and it shows you're down like 0.2, which we see in some places really bad soil, that might tell you might have to have a different program to get yourself back up to speed. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
And I'll talk some more about that. Here's another example coming up.
Is there a name for this type of test? Is this like a biological soil
This is
test?
a biological test. It's directed by cross-feed.
Okay. Oh, so that's a person
Person count. Yeah.
counting. Okay.
Yes.
So how do those change with different soil types? Because your genetics are usually different than soils that might be sedimentary. So how do these ideal numbers of these different microbes or in the soil differ depending on what the soil is?
And I don't hear that well, so I think I heard you say is how the different soil types affect us. We work in sand with citrus. We work in the Midwest in really good soils. We work in Montana, gravels. Biology can live in any of those places. You might have to feed it more. Some places will just have better organic matter and have higher counts. So then you manage your system a little bit differently. You might, that's where the chemistry test and the tissue samples come in. Because a lot of times the chemical companies say, hey, if you want a crop, you got to put this much down. Well, if you have a lot of organic matter, you already have nitrogen in the soil, why would you put all that stuff down? So yeah, you factor all those in when you put you tell them what kind of soil you have when you send it in, and then when you overlay that with your soil type and your chemistry test and your tissue analysis, then you can say, am I on the right track for the crop I'm trying to grow?
Are the standards the same per soil type? You look for different, is there a different set of standards per type of soil?
There kind of is. You're going to see. Well, a lot of things is going to be reflected in how much organic matter you have. You're not going to have the same organic matter some of ours here in the Midwest, but you still want the biology working for you. The guys who work with Illinois, when they got their biology rocket, they don't even use any fertilizer. And even in corn production, we worked with some guys there that had like a 6,000 acre strip on the road, and everybody kept driving by saying, this is going to crash, this is going to crash. Well, they're testing their chemistry, they're testing their tissue, and they're keeping their biology healthy, and they're not crashing, which frustrates other people because everyone's telling them, put more down, put more down. in a system like the Alma guys, where they've really destroyed their ground, they don't have a lot of water. It's pretty sandy, it's hard packed. You're behind the eight ball, especially if you have to get a treaty. So you're gonna have to really push the biology and feed it to get it established. Over time, once you get it established in any soil, if you're not digging it, if your needs are being met, it'll kind of keep itself going. But there's a lot of cropping systems, we ask too much for the ground. So we have to put inputs. Ford's doing this trial on some wheat ground, and a lot of the issues they're having up there is with the acidity issues, and that's, a lot of that's just flat too much nitrogen. You know, maybe they don't need that much nitrogen, maybe they need more protein-based source of nitrogen, it doesn't have the salt. And every place that we go, everything's a little different, and so you're right, you have to know the exact site you're working on. Yeah.
I'm just curious if you could comment on what happens to soils in the forests where there's clear cutting going on and what the effects on the dynamics of the soil would be after clear cutting.
Do you need this to change the biology, or is it?
Yeah, there's a change of biology and
Yeah.
obviously trees getting to shake the ground and hold water a long time. And there's probably a certain biology of the soil while trees are growing. I'm just curious
Well,
what
you know,
happens to the soil after the cut.
well, the trees, basically, they've created a system, if they're very healthy before they clear cut, is super fungally dominated. You know, we would know that, we would guess that, and the test would probably show it. So if you clear cut and you want grass to go back in there, it's gonna take a little while, you know, it's gonna be a whole different system. I'm not sure the point, if you're trying to figure out how to reclaim it or how to get stuff to go back in it, or like if you clear cut it, would your goal be to turn that into pasture, or would you want to reseed it back into timber? A lot of things depend on your objective.
Yeah, no, I'm just, really interested in the effects of the clear cut on the soil and forest. Direct impact of the trees.
The truth of the matter is, I've never really studied it.
Okay.
And I'm interested in that because I see burns, and I know a lot of times we can end up sterilizing the ground from a super hot burn. And we tried to do some trials at the Paradise Fire in California, but then it kind of fell apart and followed through this. But I do think we could get some reseeding going on if we could get the biology back, where we destroy the biology from fires, but I really don't know what's going on after you clear it, because I never looked at it. I'm sorry. Yeah. Another question?
Well, if it's clear cut, we clear cut some water. It's geological, you have to grow a top. If you just let it grow, then you get them goddamn worms in there. Trees grow like this, you can't ride a horse. It's not a clear cut. The mine don't burn so damn hot like it did in 1910, where it burns the dust. It burns the dust. Then you're down to nothing.
Yeah, you know, we actually forgot about this. We worked at so many different places. The fire over there in White Sulphur a few years ago. I wish I had some pictures here. So what we did, you might know Spencer Lawler? He's not a kayaker. How do you not know that? Anyway, he had a place, bought it, and then it burned. We just got smoked up by Gulls up there out of White Sulphur. That fire came from the other side, and yeah, I did a ton of damage. They were working with the place over out of Boston there, and then they got burned too. We were watching the smoke up on the hill, both sides got torched, but what we did to be proactive, we never did get the biology down because the rains came, so it was forcing on the rain, so we aerial seeded it And to hold some of those trees back, we ended up using a mixture of some clover and then couple different orchard grass plants. This way? Can't remember the name of the trees, but we were up there, we got the project started. Actually, Matt Ricketts, we worked with him and we toured it, looked at it, and so we used a seeding mixture to stop some of that encroachment that you're talking about. And our plan there, and it was very successful. I have pictures I can show you. But the foresters didn't do anything, it's still black today. He's got grass this tall. The elk will eventually, the cows will eventually take his orchard grass out. But the one thing about, and now we're going on a different tangent, so some of the rules, ecological rules for Asian is Mother Nature wants to put back what belonged there. If we can shade out some of those conifers initially, eventually the other grass will die out and some of the natives will start to come back in. But it's going to be a 10, 15-year project. But you're right, if you don't do anything on a forest like that, it's like the park did that. You know, they had those fires in '88. You still can't walk through that country.
You can put fire around. You can move it over here, so everyone's dead, here, you can move it. That stuff down there, Yellowstone, get rid of the thing, and just moving it here and there, it got out of control. They're really wrong. That old boy, the supervisor of the Glacier Park, he's seen that stuff coming to the heat, he put a kibosh.
You know, Yellowstone fires, I was an outfitter in that backcountry in '88. I had to ride through those fires. It was crazy. That was a crazy year. Oh, yeah. That was beyond crazy. I hope it never happens again. But yeah, so.
But you have to serve around to change your temperament. You can't let it go lodgepole, lodgepole is renewable. Now, fur is different. The lodgepole, they get so big, whack them.
I agree.
They'll grow back on their own.
Yeah. We undermanage and then we have never reactionary. You know, it sounds like you guys are trying to mitigate that, which is pretty cool.
On a small scale.
It's the stuff you guys are doing.
Yeah.
So I agree.
Not at scale. Yeah.
So back to this, I wasn't part of this project. The gal called me up, she did a bunch of seeding. This is near the airport. You see the water tower and the towers and stuff. Well, this particular piece of ground was part of two different ranches. So there are two different historical managements going on. On one side, she seeded everything, turned into a complete stand of kochia. This side came out okay, and she seeded late. But what's interesting here is if she had tested her soil before she seeded, we did some tests back then, and the fungal bacteria ratio was super low. And this was pretty decent. So our practices can have long impacts after we sell the ground too. So, you know, that was a farm ground. He probably used a lot of chemical. Maybe he farmed it up a bunch. Let's go to the next picture here. She mowed it all down. She didn't get any grass to grow where the biology was for. And she had not a bad stand there for considering that it wasn't irrigated and it wasn't even that good of a year. But the biology promoted the grasses that she wanted. Biology there promoted the weeds that she did not want. So she had to start again. It was a waste of effort. We've seen that time and time again, especially a lot of reclamation in these part of the state. They say, well, sometimes it doesn't work, it's precipitation. Well, sometimes it's if you're planning on really bacteria dominated ground, you're probably not going to succeed. You're probably going to fail. So it's something you need to factor in. A trial we did in Texas with rescue grass, Taylor asked to talk about cheatgrass. So this basically is southern cousin to cheatgrass. This was in the paddock. And we had a pathway going down, so we seeded it all, sprayed one side, didn't spray the other, inoculated it. This is the side that we didn't treat. So you're thinking, wow, looks better than the tree side. Well, nobody really wants a solid stand of cheatgrass. And as you can see here, if you look real close, the little tiny seeds we planted are starting to come back. The biology didn't stop some of the broadleaves from coming. But what it did was it made an environment that the cheatgrass had a hard time getting going. Which is kind of what I would prefer to see, find a place with cheatgrass struggles. I did some trials up at my place. This is in the fall. It's a bad picture, but it's been a 6-year process working with biology. The place someone else had it before, 90% cheatgrass cover now. Right now, I'm probably down to less than 10%. There was some of the bulbous bluegrass, it just disappeared. It's not a magic bullet. There are a lot of it is your management, but you can speed up management by trying to accelerate some of your biology. I mean, a lot of you guys have probably had range classes where you have accelerated practices. That was fertilizer, water, whatever, a bunch of different things, cutting trees. If you don't manage well afterwards, defer grazing, a lot of these accelerated practices just don't work. I don't want to ever think, you guys think that biology can out trump bad management, but it can go hand in hand with it.
When you say you're adding biology, what does that look like? Your soil amendment is biological critters.
Not much for critters, it's an extract. So when you have fungi and bacteria, fungi like complex carbohydrates, bacteria like simple carbohydrates like molasses and sugar. So we don't want to encourage the bacteria because it's going to come anyways. We encourage the fungi, so we can feed some complex carbohydrates, some humics, and we use fish and different protein-based sources of nitrogen. Just to
Is it different? Is it the same mix or you do a different mix for each site?
well, there are some lab-raised strains. We happen to believe that.
Not sure.
Can you guys hear me okay? Can you guys hear me okay? Is it the missing stuff? Good. So if you have a super diverse stuff that comes from the wild, there's going to be thousands and thousands of different strands in there. If there's no pathogens in there, what belongs there will stick and what doesn't belong will just die off. So basically, if you can get, and it's always good to get stuff close to home. If you're capable of doing that, we really encourage people to make their own extracts. And sometimes you have everything in the soil you need, so maybe you just need to feed that fungi. So then you give it a food source, and that's one of the trials we're doing with Enda. She was trying to figure out what are some of the better food sources, what works better than others, because there's so many things out there. Let's switch here again. This is down by the house. That's probably tough soil to reclaim right there. So we had a bridge and the fence came in, they had to tear the road out. They were supposed to be there till July. Thought we were having Christmas with them. They actually aligned them with them. And so one of the big projects they had was every time they had 3 bridges to do. Of course, one bridge is a waste of time because it's floodway. But they'd have to dig up the road. So they were constantly saying, where can we dump this stuff? Where can we dump this stuff? So there's a couple holes. I said, dump them. Problem was, I said, when you dump it, give me some room to put some dirt on. But they had equipment there in a hurry, so they filled every hole completely to the brim. Left me no room to put dirt. So this surface that I'm trying to reclaim here was underneath the county road for probably over 150 years. So this virtually has no biology in it. I mean, this is as dead soil as you could possibly imagine. So this wasn't on purpose, guys. This was an accident. I didn't feel good about this. It was like, I thought, what the heck? So I hired the next spring, I hired a guy a hydro seeder, and I said, I used a 12 seed cover crop mix. I put some perennial grasses that I wanted, and then I was mixing biology in there, and I said, okay, you just spray it down here, glue it to the ground for me. Because There's no way I was gonna even touch that ground, so I glued the seed to the ground behind it. Next picture. I did make a mistake because I thought one tank would cover all the sites. It turned out to be the 4 tanks, so I put 4 times the biology on this side than I did on this. Then I had to go mix some more up. I watered it up. Well, I had very germination rate. It was a success, and I didn't put any of the ground or the seed under the ground. I just glued it to the top. So this is the one site. There's another site down the road at 400 yards, and I'll show you a picture of that. This was interesting to me. The guy had built that house, he dug a hole. And that hole had been there 25 years. I looked at it, he always said, if you got dirt, throw it in there. I said, hey, you want me to have these guys fill this up? So they filled that up to the rim too. He came out, he goes, Vern, it's a little bit of gravel, isn't it? I go, yeah. And then he said, but I want to have the sagebrush in there too. So what I did was, I didn't use the cover crop mix, I just put the thick spike and the western wheatgrass in there. And then I just grabbed some of the seed off the sagebrush right there and threw it on top and inoculated. So this is 2 years later. This looks exactly like the other picture of the gravel. It succeeded. So now we go on to this is 3 years later. Sagebrush is out of control. You know, some of these trials I didn't really pre-plan, you know, they were kind of accidental. So I was really careful when I sprayed it just to draw a line here. I didn't want to touch any of that. So that had been established. It's just a weed patch, some crested, mustard, cheatgrass, big weed. Go to the next slide. This is 4 years later. That line is still there. If you walk through this, the cheatgrass isn't there, the mustard's not there, most of the weeds aren't there. This is super heavy. I never touched it. I never tried to mitigate it because I just wanted to watch and see what happened over time. What's stopping the weeds from going over to the other side? There's bare ground in there. It's not solid. I don't think the biology is really letting that stuff creep over there. I've seen that over and over again when I'm getting to the point where I'm going, hey, something seems to be working here. Let's go to the next slide. That's the weed patch right next to the cedar part that was on ground. It's actually better dirt there than the rock pile that I worked in. That's the treated side. It's pretty, I mean, you can see a little, there's bare ground. It's not perfect, but you know, when you have a low precip area and you're looking at the similarity index, bare ground's part of the landscape. But that's, when people say, hey, we have bare ground, this is a bad situation. Sometimes it's a great situation because we don't have enough, because we have limiting water. But I think that looks fine, and he's happy with it. And that gets grazed too, gets grazed hard by me, a pile of elk. So it's not like that's intact from the animals. I had hundreds of elk every day come through. This is a field out in front of the house. I used to take care of the right-hand side. So this was farmed all at the same time, 27 years ago. I did 2 treatments. That hillside you see that I put the line on, always had a hard time getting that to stay green. Kids grew up moving down on them. The point of this is that the treated side greened up earlier in the spring as compared to the untreated side. I thought that was pretty cool. And then now we're having a whole nother study that I started on watching the field die because I ended up getting tired of taking care of the neighbor's field and he didn't do anything. So this is going to be interesting to you guys possibly. So the guy that Ford's doing his PhD with Dr. Everly, he came down 5 years ago to meet us. He was new. He was the first professor from MSU that was really thinking about looking at farming and all these different things from a biology approach. So we invited him down. We talked to him. We got a grant for him, so he kind of paid attention to us. So he came to the house. He took 3 soil samples. And I think he did that because I had his family down there. I mean, it was not something I asked him to do. So he took them, put them in the freezer at 60 below, whatever it was, just for curiosity's sake. So we had field, the same management for 27 years, same soils. Everything was identical management. But one was treated and one wasn't. So it's not a replicated study, which really doesn't, so basically means nothing to science. It's not replicated, but it meant something to me. So we took the samples, we go to the next slide here. And then I'm gonna show you a picture of those fields afterwards. You don't wanna bother reading it. Basically, there's a acidity problem, the treated side. And one season, quit having issues, wasn't acidic, had healthy microbial community, and the side I didn't treat was unhealthy. And we didn't get these results back for like 4 years. It sat in the freezer. One day he finally did it. So it's like, it's pretty cool. He kind of got excited about that. So here's looking down on those fields. This is the field I'm still taking care of. This picture was taken last fall. The only thing different between this part of the field and this part of the field on the neighbors was when I was treating my field before I could, the last year I was taking care of it, this was 5 years ago. I had some stuff in the tank, so I drove across that lower part and I used that ditch there for a line. I said, hey, listen, I just ran it out on there, didn't think much about it. So this is the part that didn't get treated 5 years later, which is right here. Those weeds have not come into here, and those weeds haven't gone into there. So you take the next picture. So when we compare them side by side, this was last summer, we had a wet year. That lower part of the field, it's not in that bad of shape, and it hasn't had any water, any care for 5 years. The top part is a complete disaster. I hate looking at it, but I learned a lot watching the field die. That was almost as interesting as watching the field come on. So this summer I tried to do some trials. I got a grant, my mistake, I applied for it. I was trying to have other people get it, we gave it to me instead. It's just frustrating, but so I thought, you know what the heck? The key to reclamation is water. The faster we can get something to germinate, better our chances are of having our reclamation succeed. This grass here is a native grass that typically germinates in 21 days. I put this on a hard packed piece of ground that was in a dog kennel, and it just like as tough as this. I threw the seed on, I used a little vermicast, a little inoculant. The grass came up in 6 days. 22 days it looked like that, and 80 days it looked like that. So I did 2 of these trials. I don't have pictures of the other one, but the next site actually did it in 8 days, came up out of the ground. That's promise when you have a low precip area, you're trying to reclaim. The next slide here. So I did a bunch of trials everywhere and all across the board with native seed. And this was like in the middle of that hay field. We treated everything, got to the 3-leaf stage and came up significantly faster. And I did some down in the garden area. I saw the same results everywhere. I even did one deal where I had a solid stand of weeds. I just threw the seed on top of the weeds, sprayed it down with the stuff. It's growing. Maybe it's still there right now. And I'm going to try to see. It was a native mix that I think would be really useful in the Paradise Valley. So I haven't identified all the species yet that came up. I'll be able to tell later this spring. So this study I'm still continuing on. Arthur Blanks, one of the biggest landowners in the Paradise Valley. He supported us on some trials with MSU. Dr. Emery, that got us a grant, close to $1 million grant to do the study that Ford's doing right now in the research center of the moccasin in the greenhouse. And so we see this and stuff in a biological approach, and I'll just kind of zip through this one here, but this was a side-by-side on there. Go ahead, you can keep going.
$7 an acre, that's your.
Yeah, it was cheaper up front. What we did was cheaper than the conventional. So we did half the field conventional, half the field biology. We wanted to see the difference in production and cost. So we were cheaper. We started out baseline soil test and farm. Synthetic fertilizer was pretty bacterially dominated. We knew we were up against that. We can keep on going here. So we laid out a grid for, on the weeds. We're gonna say, what's the difference in the weeds on each side? How can we measure that? So we laid out, we counted all the weeds. And here's a picture of the biological approach compared to chemistry, and then I'll show you a graph, you can go on to the next one there.
You say chemistry.
Well, we used Rocky Mountain fertilizer, just straight synthetic fertilizer. Synthetic fertilizer. This was dramatic. This was very telling. The traditional side, difference in the weeds at time of germination, they kind of blew me away. I did not expect that. We actually had the head of the NRC come out when we did some of our clipping and weighing. And we had talked to him a bunch. He was out there walking with us. He said, you know, hear you guys, support you guys, walking the field. Because he didn't expect that. We had a couple of guys, we go on to the next one. So then we did feed analysis. The control compared to the treated. Not that much different. Good quality. You know, one side got rained on in one bit, so this is probably not the best example, but we didn't suffer at all from it. That's the point of that one. When we looked at the nutrient level in the crops, the tissue sample, it seemed like the treated had more in their system than the traditional chemistry, especially with the nitrogen and the potassium. Phosphorus was the same. I like this picture here. We clipped and weighed, walked across. I walked across that field so many times that summer, and the owner of the ranch never walked across it once. Or the hired man, you know, they never did till they cut it. But the biological side, way more germination. This is cast metal grown with alfalfa. You can see way less. There's more empty ground here. So when you have a field that you're cutting, not going to seed, and you don't have a rhizomatous grass, the gift that keeps on giving forever is your germination rate the first year. That's your gift that gives you all the way till we have to terminate the crop and start again. What's that?
What's the broadleaf?
That's alfalfa. Alfalfa and cash metal grown.
Guys, can you explain that all that you said that your germination the first year determines the success of it, because it puts out a bunch of seeds and they
Well,
seed make or?
I'll explain that over. It's a good question. So the gift that keeps on getting, I've walked across a lot of fields at places, and you see bare ground in the field, and you have a field that's 4 or 5 years old. It's hard to get stuff to establish in the center of that. You got autotoxicity with your alfalfa. The grasses sometimes are hard to get to germinate. So if you can have a really high success rate in germination the first year, that field's set for a long time if you don't wreck it. So this side here is it's gonna have a real hard time catching up with that side in subsequent years, because you don't let any of it go to seed. You're harvesting it. So we did some clipping and weighing. That's from the NRCS. Actually, he wasn't the guy that did it. We just posted a little picture. I'll be honest, it's really old. That's actually was.
It looked right. I never would have questioned it.
But Ted, he was the boss. He actually came clipping and weighing with us with another guy. You can look at the graphs. Alfalfa wasn't a whole lot different, but we saw a huge difference in the grass. Most of your alfalfa grass fields, you're not putting nitrogen on them anyway, because you don't want to lose your legumes. But you do want your grass to germinate, because why would you bother planting it if you didn't want it to grow? So they wanted it to grow, so they grew it. Another side-by-side picture. I think this was the next year. Still more weeds in the traditional side. Then we did a couple producer trials. When we were starting to do this, we would actually clip and weigh with people, because no one ever clips and weighs. No one ever does typically we'll do a control strip, so we force people to do control strip, we didn't charge them, we just went out and did it. We learned a lot. This guy, we had a strip in the middle, we treated one side, we did the other side, and click on to the next one. This dry year, we really jumped up the biology, and that could be skewed too, you know, there's snapshot tests, I'm not saying that was perfect. What was more meaningful was the estimated production from our flipping and weighing with some hoops we threw out there. And the funny thing was that year wasn't a good year for him. He said, I didn't have the production because he had some water issues. But if he hadn't done anything, the control really did not look good. And that was right smack in the middle of the field. It wasn't a cherry pick at all. It helped. It helped him a bunch in a dry year.
Can you talk, y'all understand when he's talking about clipping and weighing, does that make sense to everybody in the back? Students, or what he's getting at there?
What we found is a lot of times when people are looking out across the field, they're looking at the height of stuff. Till you clip and weigh, you don't really know what your actual production is. It's tedious, you have to get on your hands and knees, but it's a telling way of doing it if you're trying to compare stuff.
You're weighing it wet?
Yeah, in the factory, yeah, so we're waiting. On our website, we have a little way of telling you how to do that. So you click, you put a little bag, you go around, weigh it, and you do a 3-foot circle, and then you do the math, and it tells you production per acre. The NRCS has, you can Google that on probably any NRCS website to tell you how to do it. We did some trials with Dr. Everly, set them up in replicate forms. We can keep skipping through this. We tried a couple different products, but here's some of what we were seeing. Organic matter went up compared to the control. Phosphorus got released in the treated areas. So there's a lot of phosphorus gets tied up in the soil. Everyone seems to know this. We keep putting more under. A lot of that phosphorus, the biology, can grab a hold of them, break it out, and get it back to the plant. Work on the biology. So we saw that demonstrated. This was over a longer study. And we did this with the university, so we hope it was right. They were in charge of it. You look at the forage, we had more forage, higher quality over a 5-year deal. Or 4-year deal, I think it was. Ford might correct me. I'm seeing him shaking his head too hard.
Nope.
No, he's calm. But this is what I like when we did the DNA sequencing on it.
You put up 3 fingers. I don't know what that means.
Oh, 3 years. 3 years study. Thank you for it. He's doing a 5-year study now. I'm sorry. This, as a sprayer, when we look at nitrogen and trying to get nitrogen in the ground, a lot of you guys are familiar with rhizobial inoculants to get alfalfa, nitrogen into the alfalfa. Well, what we saw happening on these treated areas was this particular family fixes nitrogen, it is free-floating bacteria. It'll fix nitrogen into grasses. It doesn't have to be symbiotic with the legume. And we saw a great increase in that. So maybe an example, my fields in front of my house that I've been working on, I did a bunch of clipping for tissue. I had a kid help me do it. Did chemistry tests all across it. My chemistry indicated that I was short on nitrogen. It averaged roughly 4 to 6 pounds per acre. The sufficiency range of my tissue was well in the sufficiency range, almost to the top end. This is after 3 or 4 years working on the biology. Plus, some of you guys have been down to Tom Minor, the Paradise Valley. I live in a rock pile. I told you where I live. It's basically not good ground. But I'm getting 2.5 tons per acre without using fertilizer and clipped and weighted this summer. And I'm also using less water after 5 years of doing it. The kids grew up, we would change hand line twice a day. Now my wife and I would change it once a day. And I have plenty of water in the ground. I'm using probes to test it. What I'm seeing is my soil is holding on to the water when it probably shouldn't be. I kind of like that. Cool. That's our company. I tried to go through that quick. I appreciate you guys listening. If you have any questions, feel free to.
Have you looked at how different types of irrigation affect the soils, like
flood irrigation versus pivot or tribal?
Yeah, the flood, you can. Gotta be careful with the flood that you don't get things anaerobic. It's a little bit tough. If a guy's good at flood irrigating, this system works there too. But the pivots, you can, less chance of drowning there, but most people run the pivots too much anyway. You know, we're seeing a lot of times, one of the first guys I worked with is a friend of mine, he's a third generation rancher. Been a friend, I said, hey, we're doing this, he said, just do the whole place. So he had fields that he could barely get the water back on after he cut them or they were burning up. And after 2 years, all of a sudden, he's going like, these fields aren't burning up. You know, I'm cutting it, coming back, and they're still green. They're hanging on. His production's gone up 4 years in a row. He's pretty happy, but if you putting stuff down through a pivot's easy with an injector. If you're flood irrigate, you have to do a ground deal. And if you're careful and don't leave the water too long, yeah, it works great. Yeah.
Yeah, I flood irrigate a number of acres. I find that it's better if I flood it and dry it up, flood it and dry it up. I get better quality grass and most of it.
Yeah, and that's, a lot of people don't, a lot of people have leaky ditches, they have flooded areas, but you're 100% right. And if your biology came up, you could probably, over time, make your sets even longer apart. You know, the fields at home that I'm working on are gravelly soils, and I'm getting across those fields every 18 days before they get a drain. And they're not droughting out at all. Where 10 years ago, I was moving twice a day. If I was getting 7 days, I was still kind of droughting out before I got back. So that's a huge difference. Like with the almond guys, water's such a key deal down there. When you harvest an almond, you have to dry out the tree, stress it. They have really sophisticated equipment that they put on to determine when to shape the tree. So the one guy we've been working with for a while, typically he's in his 70s, been doing his whole life. It would take 7 days to stress the tree, but now some of these trees are taking 21 days before you can shake them. Because the ground's hanging on to that water so well. You know, and I don't know if this is true or not, there's a gal who charges a lot of money, does all these tours on soil health. She claims that byproduct of the fungi's activity in the soil is water. I always put that slide up there, but I don't know if that's true or not, but she seems to believe it.
How deep are your fields?
I'm sorry.
Some of that there, it's under field.
Yeah.
Not because of the weather, from the water.
That was just heading out sky, and those, I was running out of Yellowstone River. I was coming out of the Yellowstone River. So, yeah, they were pumping out of the river, yeah. In the water race. I live right on the Yellowstone, and mine's groundwater, but some guys do pull out of the river too, so it's, and some of those actually, some of that's coming out of the creek too. So we're using streams and stuff, but there's not a lot of wells in the various valley that people irrigate to.
We need to get you up to Mount Hagen on some of the soils we've been working on. It's to kind of circle back a little bit to the clear cut question. I think the major thing that happens is you lose your organic layers if too much soil runs off. And there's nothing holding the forest together. Like what we saw at Mount Hagen is we've lost in some places 18, 24 inches of topsoil at the Continental Divide. So we're down to decomposing volcanic tuff, like a mineral soil, non-detect for nitrogen, you know, and we're applying an organic fertilizer on top. And I'm curious, makes me think, you know, we're doing tests of the traditional variety, but, you know, we're looking at cryptogamic crust formation that's forming on top in response to the nitrogen and the micronutrients, but we haven't really looked at the soil biology up there. Like,
I think it would make a big difference if you can get
starting from
clouds
zero.
in contact with the seed. Germination is so enhanced. We've shown that time and time again.
Can you helicopter apply that with seed?
Easily. Easily done.
Okay.
It's underneath in North Carolina.
Yeah, no, it's quick to do, yeah. It's heavy though, so it's liquid. It's a liquid solution. You mix the seed right in with it to put it out, or you just go one and then the other on top.
Do the helicopter, you're probably gonna have to, because you're gonna have a hopper for the seed.
Yeah.
Seed it and then an offload, and then it'll be a two-step process.
Okay.
It's pretty simple. We use the drone on some projects. We tried a bunch of different ways to do it.
Here, a little test plot might be in order on some of these. I mean, these are really tough soils.
That's where this works the best. When you have tough soils and you're trying to get something to grow that wants to have it.
Yeah.
You usually fail. That's the frustrating part about it. Regulations. Without biology, you actually want to grow. Any other questions?
It's got that all back there, everybody? 100% retention?
I apologize if I went too fast, but I am looking at the time. I talked for over an hour. The slide deck is, we can share that, get a hold of us. I'll answer questions. I do answer my phone. My son is smart. He put his email on and put my phone on the website.
Nice.
Awesome. You answer or anybody.
Any questions from the Zoom world?
Questions for
Questions from Zoom world? No, Ford's got it.
good. Thank you, guys.
All right, that does it for our first meeting of the year. Thanks everybody for showing up. Appreciate you. Thanks for bringing the posse. Thanks to all the governing board members and everyone else.